They said my fence was asterisk to creative asterisk. That was the exact phrase on the violation notice taped sloppily to my mailbox, fluttering in the wind like some kind of beige flag of war. No hello. No polite introduction, just the HOAS letterhead, a photo of my fence, and the words, asterisk your fence violates community guidelines due to being excessively creative. Please repaint to a neutral color within 14 days to maintain neighborhood harmony. Asterisk, I thought it was a prank. I actually laughed out loud when I read it. I even called my neighbor Tom and asked if he was messing with me. He wasn't. In fact, he was the one who'd first told me I should paint the fence however I wanted. That was 6 months ago when I moved into my house, a modest, 2-story home with a yard just begging for personality. The fence that came with the property was old, chipped, and dull. Just a plain wooden barrier that offered privacy and absolutely zero joy. I saw it as a blank canvas. So, one weekend, I got to work. I started small. A little mountain scene, some sun rays breaking through clouds. It felt good, peaceful. The next week, I added a raccoon holding a coffee cup, then a dragon winding through the posts. One thing led to another, and pretty soon, the whole fence was a swirling, colorful journey of animals, landscapes, and fantasy elements. I even had a mural of my late dog, Max, sitting knobbly in a field of wildflowers. People noticed, and not in the way the HOA expected. Joggers slowed down just to look at it. Kids pointed and tugged at their parents' hands to come closer. One family asked if they could take their Christmas card photo in front of it. Even the mail carrier told me she loved passing by it, brightened up the whole block, she said. My little passion project had turned into something that made people smile. But apparently, smiles weren't allowed under HOA law. I wasn't stupid. I knew moving into an HOA neighborhood meant rules. But asterisk to creative asterisk. What does that even mean? Was creativity illegal now? I reread the notice 3 times, trying to find a loophole. It mentioned I had 14 days to repaint the fence to a color consistent with approved tones: beige, off-white, slate gray, or light tan. I nearly gagged. It was like they wanted the neighborhood to look like an airport terminal. There was also a fine, $150 a day if I didn't comply. I'd always paid my dues on time, kept my lawn neat, and even attended one HOA meeting. But none of that seemed to matter now. I had colored outside the lines, and they wanted me to erase it. I wrote a letter back, politely requesting a formal hearing. I asked them to reconsider, citing how many community members actually appreciated the fence. I even attached a few emails from neighbors thanking me for making the street feel more alive. The response? A generic email saying that due to the nature of the violation, no hearing would be granted. That was the moment something in me snapped, not in anger, but in resolve. If they thought my little painted fence was too much, then they hadn't seen anything yet. I decided that if they were going to fine me, I might as well give them something worth fining me, asterisk for asterisk. They thought I had reached the top of my creativity. I was just getting started. The next day, I took a photo of the fence and posted it on a local Facebook group with the caption, "If anyone knows a muralist or outdoor artist looking for a fun, wild project, send them my way." Things are about to get real creative. I expected maybe a few messages. I got over 40 by nightfall. One of them was from a sculptor who worked with reclaimed metal. Another was from a street artist who had done work in downtown galleries. But the message that really caught my eye was from a man named Ray, who claimed to be a retired Disney Imagineer. I thought he was kidding until he sent me a photo of him, standing next to a life-sized animatronic pirate he'd designed. I called him instantly. Ray came by the next morning in a sun hat and cargo shorts, notebook in hand. After walking the length of the fence and hearing my story, he gave a small chuckle and said, "You know, this could be fun." That's when the real magic started. Over the course of the next 2 weekends, my yard turned into an art studio. Ray built a system to install small moving pieces, birds that flapped their wings, a raccoon that peeked out from a hollow, and even a gnome that tipped his hat when someone passed by. The sculptor added metal butterflies and twisting vines that wrapped around the wooden posts, polished until they caught the sunlight just right. The muralist filled in empty spaces with surreal landscapes, giving the illusion that the fence opened into other worlds. By the end of the second weekend, my plain wooden fence had transformed into something entirely new. Part art installation, part fantasy experience. I added QR codes to certain areas so visitors could scan and read little stories about the characters or the scene depicted. One of the QR codes led to a poem about Max, my old dog, and how he used to chase butterflies in that very yard. Another led to a mini-story about the dragon and the gnome becoming unlikely friends. Then, just to be a little spicy, I listed the whole thing on TripAdvisor and Google Maps as the whimsical fence walk. I wrote a tongue-in-cheek description, *come visit the most controversial fence in the state. Part mural, part sculpture garden, part rebellion. Great for kids, selfies, and HOA nightmares. *I thought a few people might come. Maybe a couple of families on a Sunday walk. I was wrong. Within 5 days, the listing had over 150 5-star reviews. Then 300, then 700. Parents brought their kids. College students showed up for TikToks, and even a local photography group started using it as a backdrop for themed shoots. It had become, somehow, a small but thriving tourist attraction. And all of it started with a beige notice telling me to be less creative. By the time the second month rolled around, things had officially exploded. What began as a bold response to a petty HOA complaint had turned into something much larger than I ever anticipated. On weekends, my quiet suburban street was lined with parked cars. Kids darted across my lawn giggling, pointing at the animatronic, gnome tipping his hat. People posed beside the dragon mural like it was Disneyland. My fence had become a full-blown destination. The HOA couldn't believe it. Frankly, neither could I. It wasn't just locals anymore. A small travel blogger wrote about the whimsical fence walk and called it the most unexpectedly joyful detour in town. The story got picked up by a regional news site. 2 days later, a food truck showed up. Not one that I called, just showed up. Figured this place would be a hot spot, the guy said as he handed me a taco. Mind if I park here? I didn't mind. Neither did the crowd. Pretty soon, the fence wasn't just mine. Local artists started reaching out, asking if they could contribute a section. I made a rule, nothing political, nothing vulgar, and everything had to fit the theme of imagination, whimsy, or joy. One artist painted a forest scene that turned into an underwater world as it moved across the boards. Another added a miniature fairy village along the base of the fence, complete with tiny furniture and LED lights. A sculptor donated a recycled metal owl that blinked and turned its head. Someone even installed a tiny book hut where visitors could take or leave a book. The whole thing had transformed into a living, breathing piece of collaborative art. I started collecting donations in a weatherproof box labeled "Support Local Creativity." The response was overwhelming. People left 5s, 10s, even 20s with handwritten notes thanking me. Some parents wrote about how their kids had begged to come back. A teacher left a message saying she brought her class for a field trip after failing to get permission to take them anywhere farther. Every evening, I read those notes and felt like I was doing something good, something real. But of course, not everyone was happy. The HOA board sent another letter. This one was more aggressive and noticeably more desperate. It stated that I was operating an unauthorized attraction and was in violation of zoning ordinances. They claimed I was causing unnecessary traffic, disrupting community peace, and my personal favorite, creating an environment of mockery toward HOA leadership. That last one made me laugh out loud. I kept the letter and pinned it inside the book hut. Visitors loved it, but they weren't entirely bluffing. I knew I needed to get ahead of them before they found a way to shut me down, so I hired a lawyer. His name was Sam, and he was one of those rare people who actually enjoys fighting HOA nonsense. When I told him the whole story, he nearly fell out of his chair. They want to regulate artwork now, he asked. This is going to be fun. Sam helped me register the Whimsical Fence Walk as a non-profit community arts space. We submitted all the documentation, photos, visitor logs, and donation records. But the real kicker came When we filed for local cultural site recognition and obscure clause in our city's community development charter that protects grassroots art projects of significant public interest, it had only been used once. Before, to save a hand-painted piano someone had bolted to a sidewalk. It fit perfectly. Once that application was submitted, the HOA lost nearly all legal standing. They could complain, but they couldn't force me to remove anything if they tried. It would make headlines. Sam even said, if they push this, we'll drag them into court, and you'll come out of it a local hero with a bigger donation box. Still, just to be careful, I put together a folder with every supportive message I'd received from neighbors, visitors, artists, even a local council member. I wanted to be bulletproof. Meanwhile, the fence just kept growing. I added a small gravel path along the outside so people wouldn't trample my grass. A neighbor donated benches. One day, a man in his 60s came by with a little girl his granddaughter Ann told me, "This is better than any museum I've taken her to. You gave her something to wonder about." That nearly made me cry. Word got around. More media outlets called. A segment aired on a local station called The Fence That Fought Back. I did an interview standing next to the animatronic squirrel, and the anchor ended the piece with, "This is one case where being too creative turned out to be just creative enough." One Saturday morning, I hosted an art walk. I sent out invites on social media and printed flyers. I wasn't expecting more than maybe 30 or 40 people. Over 300 showed up. There were face painting booths, live acoustic music, and a crafts table for kids. The entire block felt alive in a way I'd never seen before. People weren't just visiting, they were connecting, talking, laughing, sharing ideas. I invited every HOA board member to only one showed up, a tightly wound woman named Carol, who sat rigidly on a bench near the back, arms crossed like a chaperone at a middle school dance. She didn't say a word the whole time, but she did walk past a sculpture near the end of the fence, and I caught her stop, just for a second. It was a metal piece, a stack of crumpled up letters welded together, the words barely legible. But if you looked closely enough, you could see the phrase "too creative" bent into the metal. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The message was clear. After that day, the HOA mostly backed off. The letters stopped. The threats evaporated. They had lost the public narrative, and they knew it. Any further action would make them look petty and worse. Anti-community. I kept improving the fence, taking suggestions from visitors, collaborating with artists, and organizing small monthly events. What was once my private act of resistance had become something shared by thousands. I still get asked how it all happened, how I turned a dull wooden fence into a living piece of art, a tourist spot, and a legal triumph. The answer is simple. I refuse to paint over joy. I refuse to let a handful of people tell me that imagination had no place in a neighborhood. The HOA said my fence was too creative. Now it's a destination, a symbol. And best of all, every time they drive past it, they have to see the smiling faces of people they tried to silence, and they still can't do a thing about it.